Hi, friends. Happy Monday. I hope you had a good Monday and a good weekend. We had a really busy one, so I had a friend over crafting for a little bit on Saturday, and I had um, church, and then a granddaughter birthday, and it was a big deal birthday. It was her 3-year old birthday, but she had um, the fire department come with one of their big trucks to show off all of the components of the fire truck to all these little 3-year-olds. It was pretty cute. The girls were just hanging on every word at such a young age. And I know that she just wants to be a fire engine driver someday. She got to drive or get it into the seats and sit behind the wheel and all kinds of fun stuff. So it was a pretty fun day. So tonight we're going to be playing with the Loveliest Tree Bundle. Now, I talked a little bit about this earlier last week, how much I love it and why it reminds me so much of the set that I used years ago. So I'm going to play a little bit with it tonight. I'm going to show you how I achieved my old framed art. I'll show it to you, and we'll try some other techniques as well. So let's get started. Okay, so on page 71 is the Loveliest Tree Bundle. And as you can see, they gave you a couple of samples of what they did. They made one that was kind of fall related, one that was sympathy related, and it looks like they may have used like a watercolor wash or maybe some DSP for that. I'm not sure. I have to check out some of the DSP. And then this is kind of a spring version with a little bit of a watercolor wash back behind, and they die cut out the tree. So this is the stamp set, and it's got these really lovely 4 all season sentiments, and then it has a little leaf stamp, and then there are dies that cut out the tree, the leaf, and then another tree like this one with some little leaves that they made into a shaker card. So anyway, the old Loveliest or Lovely as a Tree bundle, or I guess it was just a stamp set, didn't have any dies, so it's very cool that they're doing that, because I know that I fussy cut it out lots of times, and I wish I had all of my old samples. So this is the framed art. Years ago, I put this in here with my boys. This is my son when he was little, and my stepson when he was just graduating from high school. But you can see that I had taken the card and I had cut it to fit in this frame. So I started with very vanilla, and then I stamped this, I believe, in I think we had what was called the chocolate chip or something like that, and I think that's what I used, looking at the brown. But I was working with it a little bit today and trying with basic black, but we're going to try it with the brown as well. So I was playing around a little bit with it, and this is the one that I came up with that is pretty close to my framed art, but they don't have this really pretty green. This was Mossy Meadow. Oh, no. It was a moss color, and I was just thinking about it. Mellow moss. That was it. It was mellow moss. And even the Mossy Meadow isn't really the right color. And so one that I felt was just the closest was the Old Olive, and I think that works as well. And the tree was smaller, of course. Trunk was about the same, but this just reminds me of the trees we have here in the Midwest. I love the fact that the trees here in Minnesota, there's just so many of them, and they just about cover the neighborhood. So you can't even tell from the major arterials that there's even any. Hey, Linda, nice to see you. So we can't even tell that there are people living behind the streets because the trees are just covering all the roads. Okay, so this is the one I did in Memento Black. And then I applied some ink with the little daubers, and I did it a little bit with the early espresso and the old olive. And then for the surrounding stamps on this card, I used the Versamark instead of the old olive because I think the old olive makes it a little bit more of a bright stamp, and I wanted it to be a little more subtle. Okay, so let's play. And this time I'm going to stamp the tree in early espresso. Make sure I have pretty good coverage for the ink. And actually, I think for this card, I'm not going to put a sentiment because I feel like it takes away from the tree, and you could easily put the sentiment just on the inside. Okay, I'm going to leave this open actually because I'm going to need it. Okay, and I just put a little leaf on the inside. So now I'm just going to take a little bit of this dauber and I'm going to darken the trunk a little bit. And then I'm going to just antique a little bit around the edge. It's something I did a lot more of before, and I haven't done that much. It's just a way to get just kind of what it looks like as an old photo. So you can see that this one has some antiquing around the edge. Of course, I was using chocolate chip, which is a lighter brown, and we don't really have a color that's like that anymore. So, okay, so I think that's enough brown. And now I'm going to use the old olive. So I am going to do most of my color in the middle of the tree, and then whatever's left I'll do around the outside edge because I just don't want it to be quite so bold. And then just a little bit down here. And then, believe it or not, I think framing it with the black just makes it pop and makes it so pretty. Let's get this one out here so that you can see this sample as well. So you can see it just got a little more subtle, and oops, gonna have glue everywhere. Get my wipe up before I get it in my sleeve. Okay, so this little piece is 4 inches by 2 3/4, and so that means that this black layer was 4 1/8 by 2 7/8. Okay, now for this part right here, you would think, well, why aren't you stamping it with the old olive? Well, let me show you what it looks like when I stamp with the old olive. So it's pretty dark. And if I want this lighter look, which is what I'm looking for, then I would rather use the Versamark. Let me clean up my... Versamark is just a clear, it's got some sort of an oil base to it, but it's great for embossing. So when you're using embossing powders. But it also works great when you're just trying to get a real subtle print. And what happens is when you first stamp it, it looks like nothing's happening. But after you've let it sit there for a little bit, it soaks into the, sorry, it's sticky, so it tends to want to keep clicking on the surface here. So you can see it's making a little bit of a leaf pattern around the surrounding area. much like I had the old oak leaf that was in the Lovely as a Tree stamp set from years ago. One of the things that I loved about my old neighborhood in California, and part of the reason why we chose it, is because they had 100-year-old trees all over the neighborhood. And it's partly why I fell in love with this area of the Midwest, is because they have so many large trees, so many more than we ever had in California. So it just makes for really beautiful surrounds. Okay, so now I'm just going to glue, actually I glued this one on, and I'm going to pop this one up with a dimensional, or some dimensionals, instead of gluing it down. I could have used the black dimensionals as well, but I think these are set back far enough that it's no big deal. Just adds a little 3D element to my card. And then I'm going to frame it on black again. And remember, I'm using very vanilla cardstock for this because that's what I did in my original framed art. And then using very vanilla cardstock for my card base as well. So as you can tell, using the sponge daubers for something this intricate, you're going to get a little bit of the color from the sponge coming around the edge a little bit. So another way that we can do this same tree and get a very similar effect is with I'm going to use the early espresso, but with watercolor pencils. And I think we'll get a really pretty effect for that as well. Okay, so make sure I have plenty of ink. And I think the card looks so much better without a greeting on it, actually. And it makes it so that, you know, it's a card for whatever season you have or whatever situation you have. So I'm going to go ahead and antique it again. I did like that look. And you can use a larger sponge if you want. Just makes it look like a very old, what do they call them, daguerreotype film, I think, something of that nature. Okay, so what I'm using is, they don't have early espresso in the watercolor pencils. They have pecan pie and they have old olive. So hopefully this doesn't turn out to be too light of a color, but I'm just giving a little bit of color to the tree trunk and some of the branches. Just kind of loose, not trying to be exact or too careful. I just want a little bit of brown here and there. Okay, so now I'm just going to lightly color on the side of the pencil. In the old olive. You could add more pressure to get more color in different places. And again, I'm loosely adding it. I'm not trying to be really exact because I just want it to be simple but pretty. And then you can just add a little bit more color in places where you feel like there just isn't enough. So you can see you're still getting the green, but just not as quite as much. And you can see the difference. So let's go ahead and glue this one on, the layers. And then I need to stamp my leaf again. I'm just changing position of this leaf every time I stamp it so that nothing looks exactly the same. I do still miss Lovely as a Tree. They had a little bit more variety with trees, and they also had a really pretty oak leaf that I just loved. Okay, so my dimensionals are, here we go. One of the things that we used to have as well were chalks for just about every color that we carried, and it had the chocolate chip as well. And I remember making a few of these trees with just the chalks, but we don't have any browns in the chalks right now, and so that'll be something I can ask Stampin' Up! To work on, because it'd be really nice if we had more colors. And of course, as a demonstrator, when you have all this stuff that's retired, sometimes it doesn't make sense, and so I sold it. Okay. I think the black just makes it look like framed art. I just love the way the pop happens with the black. So here's the tree, 3 different ways. And just as a reminder, this was stamped in black and then sponge daubed in both the early espresso and the old olive. And then this one was stamped in early espresso, and then I did the sponge daub with old olive. Probably a lot more color than I did with this one. And then this one I did just the watercolor pencils. I'm going to just add a little bit more green just to get it to be a little bit more vibrant. So it looks really close to that one. So that's all I'm going to do for this evening. I hope you enjoyed your time with me. And if you're watching later with YouTube, feel free to click like and subscribe. The more followers I have, the better my business does. So I appreciate the patronage. And I hope you have a wonderful evening and a great week. Thanks so much. Again, this is Angela with Wild Violets Art.